These are 10 fragrance notes that I really hope to see more of in 2025. All 10 of these notes are notes that I personally have fallen in love with, and I do think that some of these notes are super underrepresented in the fragrance industry, and I'm excited to share them with you. If this is your first time watching my channel, hello, my name is Anya. I love fragrances. I talk about them here 5 times a week, Monday through Friday. I also post additional content on TikTok and Instagram, as well as other social media platforms under the username ANECHKAFRAGRANCES. And I do have a podcast called The Fragrance Report. It goes up every Wednesday with a new episode, and I do publish full-length episodes here on YouTube for you guys to watch as well. So with this video, I hope that we can have a bit of a discussion. The last video I did on fragrance notes actually talked about fragrance notes that I did not like, or fragrance notes that I was a little bit more cautious of, because I tried to be very open-minded when it comes to the fragrance notes. There's so many fragrances in my collection that I was initially quite skeptical of because I wasn't expecting to like them. Some of those notes in those fragrances were a little bit more challenging to me at first, but then I ended up loving them. So I always like to keep an open mind when it comes to even the fragrance notes that I'm a little bit trepidatious about. So yeah, I think that was a really fun video to film because we also got to have a really productive discussion in the comments. So if you agree or disagree with any of the points I make in this video, do let me know, and feel free to share your favorite fragrance notes or the fragrance notes that you want to see more of in 2025 as well. So with that being said, let's start with the very first note, and that would be ambroxan. Now, I feel like ambroxan is a note that so many people are a little bit nervous about because it's one of those notes that you really don't know what it's supposed to smell like, but it actually ends up being really effective when it comes to the other notes in the scent pyramid. So ambroxan has typically been pretty synonymous with men's fragrances, right? Because it's added to men's fragrances, or traditionally men's fragrances, to really help with the sillage and the projection of those perfumes. So it really helps with that. But I also find that whenever I encounter ambroxan in any fragrance, it really adds to the sillage in those perfumes as well. One of my favorite iterations of ambroxan is actually in Love at First Sight by Une Nuit Nomade. I love that perfume that has ambroxan, passion fruit, lilac, and it's such a gorgeous perfume, amazing sillage. I know that Aaron Terrence Hughes also plays with ambroxan in a really interesting way, so his perfumes really travel and have that gorgeous sillage as well. But in general, when it comes to ambroxan, I'm just really fascinated by that note, and I hope to see it more in 2025 as well. So another note that I'm really intrigued by, and we're starting to see a little bit more of it, but like not as much as I'd like, but this is actually wine notes. So particularly, I think that, you know how in my last video where I talked about fragrance notes I didn't like, I talked about cherry as one of those notes. And I talked about how cherry is so often regurgitated with like that ambery accord. So it ends up being like an ambery cherry that we've all kind of smelled before. But I do think that a very interesting way of doing cherry in a unique way would be to pair cherry with a wine accord, because then that's like a fresh and new way of doing cherry. It's not something that we all have in our collections. It's not something that we've all smelled before. And the scent of wine has always been very compelling to me. So I'd love to see that incorporated in more fragrances. I actually did film a video talking about my favorite alcohol-inspired fragrances, and wine did feature in some of those perfumes as well. So I do think that we'll start to see more of it, but I'm excited to see that happen. Also, other kind of like alcohol-inspired fragrances, not necessarily like whiskey, because I feel like whiskey is so often used in fragrance notes right now. I would say it's the more popular alcohol-inspired fragrance note right now, but I want to see a little bit more of a diversity, like Campari, Aperol, like gin, you know, like different alcohol-inspired fragrance notes that we haven't typically been seeing before. So I'd really like to see that in 2025 as well. Next, I would say suede. Suede is an interesting one because I think that a lot of people are really afraid of leather. And suede to me is kind of like a more palatable version of the leather note. Suede is typically easier to wear. It's more versatile. I think it's more likable. It's not as animalic. It's more like a light velvety, velvety sensation, especially when paired with labdanum, which is a floral note that adds to that kind of like velvety sensation when it comes to fragrances. But I really do think that like when it comes to the fragrance world, right, so many people are really scared of leather, but I feel like suede is like an easy workaround. And if you are someone who's curious about wearing more leather perfumes and you're not quite sure where to start, I did film a video talking about all the leather fragrances that I would recommend in my collection. And I actually divided that video up into 4 subcategories. First, I talked about fragrances that featured the leather note a little bit, just like a little bit slightly. But then I progressed and talked about fragrance notes or fragrances that had more intensive notes of leather as the video progressed. So if you're interested in leather fragrances, highly recommend watching that video as well. Okay, another note that I've actually talked a lot about, especially when referencing 2025 trends, has been rice. I do think that in 2025, we'll start to see a lot more unique interpretations of gourmand fragrances, and I do think Asian-inspired fragrance notes are going to play a big role in that, particularly the rice note. We've started to see it a little bit more, and I do think we'll continue to see it, and I'm actually really excited about rice in fragrances because to me, the smell of rice is something that's so comforting, and I am really drawn to that smell, and it's really exciting to see. I mean, we're starting to see a lot of niche fragrances use rice, but I'm looking forward to seeing it filter out in a bunch of other categories as well. So rice to me like is kind of like an automatic yes. Whenever I see rice in a fragrance, I'm always really intrigued and really excited to smell it. Another fragrance note that I find really fascinating is tea, and luckily I've included a lot of tea fragrances in my collection in 2024, especially going into 2025. I do think there is a lot of opportunity when it comes to tea fragrances. You can do a really kind of green tea, you can do an herbal tea, you can do a citrus, you can do a fruit tea. There's so many different ways you can go about it. The only thing that, the only caveat that I have is I really hope that fragrance brands will work with that creativity and not just adhere to like one type of tea fragrance, because obviously like the tea note that we're all like super familiar with is like the green tea note, right? But I feel like if we start incorporating more different types of tea fragrance notes in perfumery, we can still maintain that like sense of uniqueness, and we can still enjoy fragrance notes with tea that have a lot of diversity. But I just don't want us to get into that kind of like slot of just having like one specific kind of note that we reference when it comes to tea fragrances, because tea in and of itself is so varied and there's so many different interpretations of it. I really do hope that fragrance brands will reflect that in their fragrances as well. Okay, so next, this is a bit more niche. I'm really hoping to see more lipstick fragrance notes in perfumery. And obviously that's a fantasy note, but I think I've only really smelled 2 lipstick fragrances. One wasn't as lipsticky as I wanted it to be, and then the other one is Lipstick Rose by Frederic Malle. And to be quite honest with you, like that has been on my wish list for a really long time. I think I might as well go out and purchase it anyway because that is like the only like powdery old-fashioned lipstick fragrance that I've encountered, and that is precisely what I want to see more of. That I haven't really seen a lot of. Like, what other lipstick fragrances are there? I think House of Oud did a really interesting one that I smelled earlier last year. That was intriguing. I think that wasn't as lipsticky as I wanted it to be, but I'm specifically looking for fragrances that have like that powdery, waxy, old-fashioned lipstick scent. I'm thinking of like a lipstick from like the 90s or the early 2000s. That specific smell, like that rose infused lipstick, like that's what I'm looking for. I might as well just buy Lipstick Rose by Frederic Malle at this point because that's what I'm thinking of whenever I think of this. But if we can have something more affordable, that would be great. Okay? That would be great. That's what I want to see in 2025, honestly. An affordable, priced, vintage lipstick inspired fragrance. That's what I want. And if you know of one that's already out, please let me know because I want to have it. Rosemary is another one, actually, that I really want to see more in fragrances. Right now, we've been seeing it a lot in masculine-leaning perfumes, and I really just want it to be like in unisex options. Basilica by Milano Fragranzi is a beautiful interpretation of rosemary, and I want to see more options like that. You know, in fragrances in general. So rosemary is one that I'm really excited about. Also mint. Mint is another example of a fragrance note that we typically see in more masculine leaning scent profiles, but I want to see it more in, feminine slash unisex options. I think Ariel Shoshana Tuesday did such an interesting interpretation of mint, but the way that mint came off as was kind of like a mint tea, like a dried mint tea. It was so intriguing. I really loved that fragrance, and I still love that fragrance because of how they did like this unique interpretation of mint. And I really haven't seen any other like fragrance add mint in such a way. So I think that was a really interesting and unique interpretation of mint. So I'd really like to see like more experimenting with mint as well in 2025. What else? Oh yeah, passion fruit. This is kind of like a personal preference, but like, remember how in my video where I talked about the fragrance notes I didn't like, I talked about so many gourmand fragrance notes? So many of them. Passion fruit is a fragrance note that I will continue to like. For now, we'll see if that changes, but so far I really enjoy passion fruit. I think it's like a fun and unique interpretation of a gourmand scent profile. I really enjoy passion fruit. I love the smell of it. I'll reference Love at First Sight again by Une Nuit Nomade. I loved that passion fruit fragrance. Like that, there's passion fruit in there with lilac and ambroxan. So unique, so amazing. Love that fragrance. I know that Mes Bisous, which is a really interesting niche brand that's actually that's created by a lady from Turkey, but she is now based in Dubai. So they have a really intriguing new fragrance that comes in a turquoise bottle that has such a photorealistic passion fruit scent. I smelled that. I was like, this is amazing. I love it. So yeah, like I want to see more passion fruit in 2025. What else? Oh yeah, this is a kind of like niche, but like I want to see more like olive slash olive oil accords in fragrances. I'm talking like aromatic perfumes, but with like a creaminess of olive oil. Like if we can get that more often, I would be very, very happy. My favorite interpretations of like this kind of like aesthetic that I have in my head would be a Grove by the Sea by Arquiste. I love the olive in there. And to me, it comes off as kind of like an olive oil. It's creamy, but not lactonic. I love that. And then Salted Muse by Orbella. I don't know. I think that there is olive in there, but like that creaminess that you can get when you put an olive inspired note into a perfume. Love that. Love that so much. Really want to see more of that in 2025 as well. All right, so those are all the notes that I'm hoping to see in 2025 and beyond. Let me know, what do you think of my picks, and if you have anything that you really want to see in 2025, let me know about down below. Let's have a chat about it. I'm really curious to hear your picks as well. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and I'll see you next time. Bye.